Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be going over how to forge some tongs. We're going to be making them out of 3/8 by 1 flat bar. Here's the stuff you're going to need. You're going to want a pair of tongs. You're going to want your steel. These are approximately 8 inches. Just a rough measurement. I space them out with my hand like that. A hammer, an anvil, a fire, the fuller, and a punch. And then not seen here is also some material for the pin that will go into the boss of the tongs, but we'll get into that when we get there. And without any more delay, we're going to go ahead and just jump right in.
I start by forging in a fuller about 1 inch from the end of the bar. This is going to create the transition between the bit and the boss of these tongs. And you can see the steel is bulging out a little bit on the sides as I drive it down onto the fuller, so periodically I'll use the flat of the anvil to forge those swells back down. And here I'm just going to repeat the whole process for the other side of the tongs. Now for the reins of the tongs, I'm going to jump over to the power hammer and start working my way up the bar towards the boss. This will allow me to do the majority of the forging under the power hammer, then I can jump back over to the anvil to forge in the shoulder by hand. While I am using the power hammer for this, I really want to stress that this absolutely can be done by hand. Most of the tongs on my tong rack were forged 100% by hand. I'm just using the power hammer here to speed up the process. Back at the anvil, I positioned the blank at the edge of the anvil and then used half-face blows to forge in the shoulder, and then once the shoulder is established, I'm going to work on rounding out this section of the reins. And again, like before, I'm just going to repeat the exact same process for the second tong blank to make a matching set. And once everything is rounded out, I can hold the tongs up on end. That way I can see where it needs to be straightened out, and then use some lighter blows as it cools down to take out any bends in the reins. Once the reins are done, the next step is to punch a hole for the pin. I'm going to drive the punch in, and then each time I hit it, I'm going to pick it up and reposition it. That way it can't bounce in between hits and cause it to hit in the wrong spot. And once I'm about halfway through, I flip the tongs over. I can see the exact position where I was punching on the other side because of that imprint that it leaves on the back. I'm going to line up with that, and I'm going to start punching in this side to complete the hole. And once I have the punch far enough in that it can kind of stand up on its own, I'm going to move over to the pritchel hole, and then I can drive the slug out. Unfortunately, I dropped the punch when I was moving the tong wing on this one, so I went ahead and put it back in for a reheat while I work on punching the other side. And again on this one, when I flip it over, you can see that darker imprint from punching on the other side. It shows up beautifully on the back. That allows me to line up the punch perfectly so that I can complete the hole without the misalignment of the punch on either side. And while I'm punching out the second tong blank, you can see here my punch gets stuck. I tried wiggling it, I tried knocking out, but unfortunately it got really stuck, so I had to grab another smaller piece. I put it through the pritchel hole and I drive it out with that other piece of steel. This is just something that happens sometimes, so over to the vise now to twist the bits into position. I'm going to lock it in the vise and then just use a twisting wrench to rotate the bit 90 degrees. I did have a viewer point out in my tongs without tongs video that depending on which direction you twist the bit, you'll make either a right-handed or a left-handed tong. I've never noticed much difference one way or the other, so just figure out which one works best for you and then go with that for all of your tongs. Now on to making the pin. I'm going to take a piece of 1/2 inch square and forge a taper onto the end of it. I'll periodically check this taper against the hole in the tongs so I know exactly how big the pin needs to be. Then once I've got the sizing right, I come back to the anvil. Using the edge, I'll forge it down straight to the exact fit that I want. That'll give me a straight pin, and then I can work on getting it worked into the tongs. And you can see here the pin is still just a little bit too big, so I'm going to put it into the boss and then I'm actually going to drive it down. That'll leave a kind of a scraping scratch mark on the pin so I can see exactly where it becomes too big, and then I can use that to file down or forge down the pin a little bit farther. Once I have the pin down to the right size, I'm going to use the hot cut, and I'm going to cut almost all the way through the bar. That way it's still attached. I can use the rest of the bar as a handle, but it'll break off easily once I have it in place and I'm ready to go. Now that I'm ready to put it together, I'm going to lay both sides of the tongs in position on the anvil so the holes will line up. I put the pin in, break the handle off, and then drive it down to make sure that it's completely seated. I'll flip it over and start peening this down, and you can see I actually did make a mistake here with the pin. When trying to peen down the longer side, it bent over to the side. At this point I could have taken it back out and started again, but I just went with it. It was already bent over pretty far, and it'll still work just fine. Another heat, I flip it back over and peen down the side that was originally the head, and then the tongs are locked together. I cool down the handles in the snow so that I can hang on to them, and then I'm just going to work these tongs loose so that the hinge pivots smoothly. Back over to the vise one more time so I can adjust the reins. I just want to move them over towards the center. That way the reins line up with each other evenly rather than being offset from one another. And now back to the anvil for the last step. I'm going to take a piece of 3/8 by 1 inch flat bar. I just put it in the jaws, hold it there, and then drive the jaws down onto it with a hammer so that this will size the tongs down to that 3/8 thickness that I want. Now with the jaws adjusted, I just have to let them cool down, and these tongs are done. Don't forget to like the video, comment with what you want to see next, and subscribe for more.